The story begins in the 1700s. 13 colonies existed along the eastern coast of North America. These colonies were under British rule. Life was different then. People worked hard to build a new world. They farmed the land, traded goods, and created communities. The colonists valued their freedoms. They cherished the right to have a say in their government. However, tensions grew between the colonies and Great Britain. The colonists felt that Britain was imposing unfair taxes and laws. One major point of contention was the issue of taxation without representation. This phrase became a rallying cry for the colonists, who felt that their rights as Englishmen were being violated. They believed that only their own colonial assemblies had the legal authority to tax them. The colonists argued that they should not be taxed by a government in which they had no voice. This sentiment was echoed in town meetings and pamphlets, where leaders like Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry voiced their opposition to British policies. The Stamp Act of 1765 was a prime example. This act imposed a direct tax on the colonies for the first time, requiring them to pay a tax on every piece of printed paper they used. This act required colonists to pay a tax on all printed materials. The colonists resisted. Merchants, lawyers, and printers were particularly affected, and they led the charge in organizing opposition. They boycotted British goods and organized protests. These boycotts were highly effective, leading to the repeal of the Stamp Act in 1766. However, the tension between the colonies and Britain continued to escalate. The Boston Tea Party of 1773 was a dramatic act of defiance. It was a direct response to the Tea Act, which granted the British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. Colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded British ships and dumped tea into Boston Harbor to protest the Tea Act. This bold action demonstrated their willingness to take drastic measures to defend their rights. These acts of rebellion pushed the colonies and Great Britain closer to war. The increasing unrest and the British government's harsh responses set the stage for the Revolutionary War, which would ultimately lead to American independence. The Revolutionary War began in 1775, a pivotal moment in American history that would shape the future of the nation. With the battles of Lexington and Concord, where the first shots were fired, signaling the start of the conflict. These skirmishes marked the beginning of armed conflict between the British and the colonists, setting the stage for a long and arduous struggle. The colonists, driven by a desire for freedom and self-governance, were now fighting for their independence from British rule. George Washington emerged as a strong leader whose strategic acumen and unwavering resolve would prove crucial in the fight for independence. He was appointed commander of the Continental Army, a role in which he would lead the colonial forces through many challenging battles. The Battle of Saratoga in 1777 was a turning point in the war, demonstrating the resilience and tactical prowess of the colonial forces. The colonists' victory at Saratoga convinced France to join the war on their side, providing essential military and financial support. This alliance with France provided much-needed support to the American cause, bolstering their efforts and morale. The war raged on, with both sides experiencing victories and defeats as the struggle for American independence continued to unfold. Section 4. Declaring Independence, a Turning Point. In the midst of war, the colonists took a bold and daring step. On July 4, 1776, they declared their independence from Great Britain. The Declaration of Independence, primarily written by Thomas Jefferson, proclaimed that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. This document became a beacon of hope for freedom and self-determination. The Declaration of Independence inspired the colonists deeply. It gave them a common goal to fight for. It also garnered international support for their cause. Section 5. The Legacy of Liberty. A new nation emerges. This chapter delves into the birth of a new nation, forged through the fires of revolution and the quest for liberty. The Revolutionary War finally ended in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. This monumental treaty marked the end of a long and arduous struggle for independence, a struggle that had seen countless sacrifices and acts of bravery. Great Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States of America. This recognition was a pivotal moment, symbolizing the birth of a new nation on the global stage. The newly formed nation faced many challenges. The war had left the country in ruins, and the people had to rebuild their homes, their lives, and their government from the ground up. However, the spirit of the revolution lived on. The people were filled with a sense of hope and determination, believing that they could create a better future for themselves and their descendants. The American Revolution had a profound impact on the world. It was not just a fight for independence, but a fight for the principles of liberty and justice. It inspired other countries to fight for their own freedom. The ideals of the American Revolution resonated across the globe, sparking movements and uprisings in many nations, and inspired democratic ideals around the globe. The revolution's emphasis on individual rights and self-governance became a beacon for those seeking democracy. The legacy of the American Revolution continues to shape the United States and the world today. Its principles of freedom and democracy remain a guiding light, influencing modern societies and inspiring future generations.